Sabine on here, and let me put a little Beyonce for y'all. Let me put a little Bay.
Hi.
Hi, Sabine.
My camera.
I got a little music for you.
I forget that IG kind of gives a different look. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Hi, how are you?
Hey, good. I'm good. Welcome. Happy Sunday. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Yes. So, all right.
Happy to be here.
I see a lot of people joining, so I'll give a few minutes. So I think it's just so important. Thank you for joining the Coins2Commas Lounge. It's meant to be a really chill lounge. We have a little bit of music in the background. We're getting ourselves ready for Monday. And so the purpose of Coins2Commas Lounge is to have different people come and just share their gifts. And I know you have been out here just sharing the information that we need to protect ourselves while we're legacy planning. We want to leave back a legacy for our great grandkids, like Beyonce said. But we might be confused on where do we start? We might be confused on, do I have to wait to have a business to start protecting my. Sorry, I think it paused. So I think it was best, and I'm so happy to have you here to just share some gems with my community, and I welcome your community also. So thank you all for joining. This is the Coins2Commas Lounge, and we have Sabine's Common Sense, okay? And we're going to have some legal talk. So how are you doing? You ready?
I'm good.
Ready to drop these gems? Because you always come with the gems.
You're setting the bar real high. You're setting the bar real high. Yep. I'm ready.
All right. So tell us about Sabine the Purpose Lawyer. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm an attorney. I practice in New York and New Jersey. I've been practicing for about 8 years now. And I run an asset protection law firm. So we aim to help our clients keep their money and protect their wealth for generations to come so that they can leave a legacy for their family and their loved ones. And we really enjoy doing that. I mean, I found that people in our community they just don't know any of these things exist, or, maybe they've heard of them and don't know why they should have them or should even know about them or consider them. And so it's just about opening up people's eyes. That's why I like to share information, to be able to open up people's eyes to, what's out there. And as we talk about building wealth, we also want to consider how we're going to protect it and pass it on. Because I know the generations in the past, they knew a thing or two about building some wealth, right? But it was the part where we educated the next generation and where we pass it on. That's where the misstep came in, or the, sort of like where the ball was dropped. And so we're aiming to kind of resolve that or fill in that gap to keep it going.
And it's really not just people who may not have assets. There were a lot of people we would consider wealthy that didn't protect their estates.
Yeah. It's not always about not having the money to do it. It's more about understanding the importance of it, when you should do it, why you should do it, who should be protected. And it is kind of crazy to think that people with multiple millions of dollars and assets that could be worth even more, like intellectual property, that's like your trademarks, your copyrights, that goes a long way when it comes to music and stuff like that. So it's crazy to think that people, maybe they don't see the value in it, or didn't think ahead enough, or is it that they think they're going to be around forever? I don't know. But that's kind of what we've seen, and it's been really scary. It's unfortunate.
Because there were some examples, like I think you'd mentioned once, like Aretha Franklin, Nipsey Hustle, Prince, I think you would mention.
Yeah, so Prince had, I believe his was like 200 million. His estate was like 200 million. He had tons and tons of trademarks and copyrights for his music. He had unreleased music. He had like a vault of music, and he doesn't have any children, was not married. And so, and his family, he has like half siblings. And so nothing at all was put in place for his estate, like literally almost like he never even considered it. And so
200 million go
200 million
go. So where did it go?
So right now, it's still, I believe it's still in litigation, which means that the courts are trying to, one, value it because of the fact that it's intellectual property. So sometimes it's hard to find out like how much it's actually worth. It's not that hard, but anyways, the state is being billed for legal fees. Like they've paid out millions of dollars in legal fees already because they're trying to figure out how much his estate is worth. And so, so it's just kind of tied up. Nothing has gone to his family. There's like rumors as to whether he was estranged from his family or not, but nothing has gone to his family yet.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like, I feel like it's almost 4 years ago now.
Right. And so you spend all that time building and you putting out all of this quality music or having a business or anything really.
Yes, legendary, really. Like legendary.
Yeah, like and like just like that, all that money just it's like you go and that's it.
Right. And it's like who knows like what actual value his estate or his family is going to get. And not only that, Prince was very sort of like he was a revolutionary. He was all about his Blackness as well, and he was all about the culture of music and the arts. And so he could have, even if he was estranged from estranged from his family, or don't have kids, not married, he could have started a foundation for the arts. He could have given money to organizations that are furthering that cause. He could have given money to what are called Black Lives Matter or some sort of organization like that. Like, I'm sure there were things that were near and dear to his heart, and people who knew him kind of alluded to that a little bit as well. And so none of that has been sort of like passed on, and it's unfortunate because all of this could have been avoided.
Wow. So for those of you that are just joining in, we're here with Sabine, the Purpose Lawyer, and she's an asset protection attorney. And we were just talking about the importance of, while we're building, to protect our estate. So she was just explaining briefly to us about Prince and him having an estimated $200 million estate. And because he didn't have a will, trust, or potential foundation for his money to be donated to, after he passed, that money is just sitting in court, and his family having to spend it's been about 4 years now going back and forth to claim that estate.
4 years, and currently, well, the last time I checked, it was like over $6 million in legal fees so far paid out, and I'm sure it's more now. So.
And usually in those scenarios, are they taking that money out of the estate, or is that something you have to come out of pocket with?
No, they're going to take it out of the estate. Whatever was liquid, they've probably taken it out of that from the estate assets.
Okay. So for some of us that are not familiar at all, we don't do legal lingo at all. Can you tell us, like, what is an estate? Like, when we hear estates, like, what does that mean?
So your estate is basically everything that you own when you pass, or during your lifetime, but we really only refer to it as your estate when you pass. And so it takes into consideration everything that you own. If you own real estate, if you own stocks, your retirement accounts, pension, anything that you have of value, could be jewelry, art, those type of things that's valuable. Those things are part of your estate. It's basically your assets, and your assets are anything that's of value or could be have a value assigned to it, is your assets, and that's part of your estate.
Okay, so at what point should I consider having an estate, or creating? Is it a plan that I create? Like, what really goes into even Like, what would I do? Because we have these things individually, but is it, how do I make sure that everything's combined in that estate?
So, I mean, there are different, I don't like to give like a blanket like plan, because there are different strokes for different folks, if you will.
Right.
But,
Right.
you know, I would say when we're talking about young people, some of the things that you want to make sure that you put in place is like if you have bank accounts, and so you don't say you don't have children, you don't have a spouse, if you have bank accounts or you have life insurance policies, you want to make sure that your beneficiaries, the people who you have selected to benefit from your death, that those are up to date, because sometimes things change in our lives, people change in our lives, relationships change, and you may want to change those things. So I would say if you have an insurance policy, if you have bank accounts, make sure that you have someone who that's going to pass to. And not only that, you want to, in case something happens to you. So when we're young and we're healthy, we think nothing's ever going to happen to us, right? And a lot of people, even teens, you know, now are starting businesses. And so what happens if something happens to you and you can't take care of your business and there's nothing in place? So you want to have, you know, a business continuity plan, which kind of basically says what's going to happen to my business after, who's going to take over, who has authority to do so. And then you also have, you want to have a power of attorney in place so that someone actually can exercise that authority to, like, if they need to make sure the bills get paid in your account, in your business, if they need to make sure that your staff is getting paid to keep the business going. Because a lot of businesses, I think it's over 50% of businesses that fail, over 50% of them is because someone got sick or someone, you know, was not able to physically do their job. And because there was nothing else in place, the business died. So you don't want, you know, a lot of us are solopreneurs, right? Doing it on our own. And you may have, you know, a backup staff in another country, because that's what we do nowadays. And so who is in place to kind of like carry that load for you if something was to happen? And we never want to think of something bad happening, but it's not a jinx. I think people in our communities tend to think of, if I plan for something bad happening to me, that's a jinx. Now I'm going to make, you know, I'm going to bring it into fruition. And no, it's not. You just, you know, planning for, you know, a rainy day.
Okay.
You know,
which is definitely true. I think in our culture, we're so like, oh, we don't want to be broke anymore, right? We don't want to be poor. We want to generate wealth. We want to do all of these things, buy real estate, start businesses, or invest in stocks. But when we think legal, we be like, how much is that gonna cost? You know,
exactly.
And I think that's what turns us away, is because we get so focused on the profit that we're like, now that it's time to protect, it's like, but how much is it going to cost me, versus looking at what's the value of protecting our businesses and our affairs early on.
Yeah, like what we were talking about, the Prince situation. So he had an estate of $200 million. Now, I'm sure, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say money wasn't the issue for him. But I think that if we look at the $6 million that's been spent versus maybe a couple $100, a couple $1,000 that it might have cost him for his size of the estate to put a comprehensive plan into place, that's pennies compared to what it's costing him after the fact. And so when we're looking at us, maybe we're not working with $200 million, but if you know, you worked hard for whatever you're building right now, it could be hundreds of thousands, it could be millions as well, but you don't want now all of that to go down the drain, you know, because your family, and even if it's not your family, like, let your legacy live on. Like, we're still talking about people like Rockefeller, you know, we're talking about,
old money, that old money.
That old money, we're still talking about those people. And so let your legacy live on. Like, I'm not trying to make it all deep, but, you know, you're put here for a reason. So, like,
I think sometimes we need deep. Like, sometimes we need that lesson.
Right. Let your legacy live on. Let it, you know, make a difference in the world. And with all this, like, you know, Black culture stuff going on, and we're starting to understand the value of the collective, right? Of us working together. And if we do things like this to allow our legacies to live on, then those that come behind us don't have to start over. You know what I mean? Like, where we are right now, we shouldn't be in no Black Lives Matter debate.
Right.
You know, we should be past that, but we didn't do the work. We didn't carry the torch for the generation that's going on right now. And so, you know, we're still doing the work as a result. And,
yeah,
you know, I think about my daughter who's 7 years old, and I'm like, okay, I never wanted to be an activist. I never wanted to be, not to say that I'm ashamed of being Black or anything. I'm far from that. But I never wanted to be like, yeah, Black power, like, you know, because I was always afraid of the angry Black woman type stereotype.
okay. Right.
And I recognize that it's my fight. It's my fight, because if it's not my fight, then it's my daughter's fight. And so because of that, we all have to be responsible. So let's not be selfish with our planning.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just about you, it's bigger than you. It's all bigger than us. And even with like how social media and we're all like giving out information and educating each other, it's raising the collective. And so we're realizing how all of this is bigger than us. And that's why you need to think about your legacy plan as for the culture, if you will, and not just for you, whether it be your immediate family or it be a cause that you want to push forward.
It's so true. Especially thinking through legacies. And some of us didn't know. We know this is something, and I think a lot of it has to do with education. We know this is something we want to do. And for generations before, like our parents, our grandparents, they did the best in building. Some of our parents are not from America. They came here. Like my family's from Haiti, so they come here and they're trying their best to like build the best life. And we get so focused on the building part. And then it's like they do such a great job of building and creating the right foundation. And then something happens and it's like, where's the paperwork? Like, who knows where the deed is? Who knows where? Did they have a life insurance plan? Did they have a 401k? So at what point do you feel that it's important, now that we know what an estate is? And so an estate is basically anything that's generating some type of income, revenue,
value,
or value for you.
Right.
I think someone mentioned, like, is there a particular amount? You know, maybe I started selling a t-shirt and I just, you know, made $5,000. Like, should I go out and get an estate plan? Is there a dollar amount that's attached to it? Or is it just as soon as you start making something, you put it in?
I mean, I would say as far as baby steps, you want to think about your power of attorney. You want to think about your healthcare proxy, which kind of is, if you end up in the hospital, you know, what do you want to be done as far as baby steps. But if you started a business and you're not doing this business for 3 days, you know, you plan on doing it for for longer than that, then you want to make sure that you have a plan in place. So I would say, have a conversation and figure out what sort of things you should be putting in place for yourself, and then build towards it. If you're like, well, I can't afford that right now, or I can't put that in place right now because of financial reasons, but start building towards it. And then also think about the value that you're putting to it. If you're saying that you can't afford it, but yet make sure that if you can't afford it, you're not then buying Gucci and Louis and you know, taking extravagant trips and stuff. All that is wonderful, but let's get our business in order as well, you know. And so I would say as early as possible. If you're doing something and you're building it and you know it's not for 5 minutes, then I would say start getting it done as early as possible.
Okay, I agree. So in addition to the states, you talked a lot about like the healthcare proxy and also power of attorney, and you started talking about business. What are some ways that when we do go into business, some of us go through the LLC process or the business formation process, and then some of us may not. And so how does that affect us? Like, I know recently with the PPP loan, or it was a PPP loan, right? So the disaster loan, what happens if you don't have a legal business during even this pandemic right now?
So there's a couple of things when it comes to let's go loan by loan, right? Or or relief by relief. So with the PPP loan, it's payroll protection, right? So it reimburses you or replaces your payroll. So now if you are a solo, you just work on your own, you would have been able to then either do PPP if you were paying yourself you know, a regular paycheck. If you were paying yourself regularly, then you could have done that, and you could have gotten up to 3 months of your income replaced, you know, potentially not even having to pay it back. But if you have like independent contractors who are not really independent contractors, which means they're really employees, but because it benefits you more to pay them as independent contractors, that's how you did it. So now you couldn't get money for them because they are essentially a business, right? If they're truly an independent contractor. So they would have to now go out and file for their own PPP for themselves. Okay. And they probably could not prove that how they paid themselves. Maybe they could, maybe they couldn't. So if they couldn't prove how they paid themselves, then they couldn't get that income replaced. They would have to go on unemployment in order to get their income replaced. And then if you couldn't pay them and they had to go on unemployment, now you're out an employee, right? Okay. So that's how that works with the PPP. And so if you were running a business, but you didn't have a business entity, it depends on whether or not you could have gotten relief, because it depends on how your paperwork was. If you were keeping your documents in order, if you were, you know, running your business like a business, meaning you kept your bank account separate, you have all your, I would say receipts, but hopefully you're doing things online at this point. Okay. And you have everything documented through your bank account. If you were keeping that in order, you know, if you were following the correct rules, then you'd be able to provide the government with what they needed in order to provide you with relief. And then we had the economic disaster loan. And for that one, you would have had to been in a business entity. I'm not sure if they were giving them to solos, but if you had a business entity, you would basically, that one was basically based on being able to keep your business afloat. So it wasn't based on how much you were paying in payroll or anything like that. It was just based on being able to keep your business afloat. But again, you have to be able to have the paperwork in order to provide them. Are you filing tax returns? And then are you claiming your income that you are an actual business? If you're not, then guess what? You miss out. And so we always have to think about, when you're running a business, you always have to think about what's more important. Is it more important that I keep all these coins in my pocket, or is it more important that I plan for maybe having to get a loan one day, or maybe having to go into a third-party relationship that I need to show, you know, what kind of paperwork I have going on, or the you know, how healthy my business is. Like, for instance, if you're running a product-based business, you may find yourself in a situation where now you can go into Target or one of these big box stores. If your paperwork is not in order, you know, if you don't have an accountant, if you're not filing your taxes, if you're not claiming your income, you may be cutting yourself off from bigger opportunities. So you always have to kind of weigh, you know, what's important there.
And there's really no restriction as far as how much money you should have before you start one. It's something that you should incorporate.
Yeah. Well, no, there's what I would say, what I usually tell people is, if they want to know, should I start a business now or should I wait? I say, if you know that you are going to be doing this business for a while, or you're serious about this business, it's not something that you kind of just, you know, playing around with, then I would say you should go ahead and think about what's the best business entity for you. The reason being is because you could be saving yourself a lot of money in taxes. Okay. So if you go into the proper structure, whether it be LLC, S Corp, or just a corporation, or if you decide to be a sole proprietor, which you could decide to do that for certain reasons. Not everybody should do that, but some people can. Then, you know, you want to do it as soon as you know that you're serious about your business and you're going to be doing it for a while. It doesn't have to be your forever business, but okay, you want to save as much in taxes as you can starting today.
That's definitely true. Right. Now, something that we usually do and we stop at is we have a business idea, we get the LLC, but I'm assuming that's not the only thing that's not the only place we should stop. Because I think maybe a year ago was introduced to understanding trademarks. And for me, I thought, I have a business idea, I go to GoDaddy, I buy my domain name for $20, set my website up, and like, I'm good, I'm in business. But how does like trademarking, and what is trademarking? How is that an additional protection in my business?
So trademark is basically it's called intellectual property. So it's the property of the mind, right? Because it's not something physical, but it's something that exists that is valuable to your company. And a lot of companies, especially your bigger companies, a lot of their value lies in their trademark, because it's how you know them. It's how you know whether they're a good company or a bad company. It's how you know what they sell, you know, where to look for them, where to find them. And so it's kind of part of the fabric of your business. It's your brand. And so if you're starting a business, especially if it's something that you're investing a lot of money into growing and building, you certainly want to consider protecting your trademark from the start. Okay. Because if you build a business and you start to gain a following, there's a big company, I think it's Boss Babes. They this Black woman started it years ago, and she had like over 1 million followers, I think, because she was early in Instagram. And someone else came behind her and trademarked it.
Trademarked her name, Boss Babes? Wow.
And she ended up having to get rid of it and rebrand or whatever the case is. But it was a huge setback, and that wasn't even a product-based business. And so that just goes to show you, one, you don't want someone else to come to you and say, hey, you got to pay me now because you're using my name. You know, that's number one. Or two, you know, you don't want to now have built something or went out and manufactured a whole bunch of stuff, or, you know, you invest time and energy. That you can't even get back. You can't even quantify your time. And so to have that taken away from you after you've already built it, that's detrimental.
I'll be heartbroken.
Yeah, so exactly. And then not only that, it's something that you can make money from. Like if you decide, if McDonald's never protected their name, how could they sell a franchise to somebody else? They don't own it. You know what I mean? Like you own you have the concept, but you haven't packaged it. And so if you do that, if you protect it, you'll be able to make money from just licensing it to other people, or, you know, later on selling it because you now own, you know, what it is that you're operating under. And it's separate from your business entity. A lot of people think that, like you said in the beginning, you know, I got my domain. Your domain is the least valuable thing.
Well, I thought I was doing it when I went to GoDaddy and bought my domain name. Man, I was ready to have a party. Like, hey, y'all.
Right. I mean, it's great and it's necessary, but it's not where you stop. And it's you know, barely scratching the surface. So you want to, in addition to registering your business, you want to make sure that you protect that trademark. And sometimes I would say even first, because, you know, depending on what the type of business that you're doing and what it's going to take for you to get up and running and recognized, I would say you may even want to consider doing it first.
Okay. But when it comes to trademarking, it's not just your name that you can trademark.
Yeah.
Other things like what's incorporated in a trademark.
So you can trademark your name, which is like just the standard letters, like say, for instance, Coins2Commas, just the letters.
Don't try it, y'all. Don't try it.
The application's already in, so don't go there.
Don't try it.
So you can do just the plain letters, or you can do the logo. So I typically tell people, go for the plain letters first. That gives you the broadest protection. And then you can follow up with your logo once the letters have been protected. Okay. And the reason why you want to do that is because the logo also is how people are going to know you and going to come to recognize you, in addition to just the plain letters. But because you have the plain letters, it's broad. But say you have a logo that's really distinct and you really don't want anybody else, you know, using it or being able to replicate it, you want to protect that as well, because someone could use different letters. Now that you have, you know, they could use different letters with your design, and you don't, you know, that's something that you don't want. So I would say letters first if you are, you know, if money's an issue or if you're figuring out how to get started, and then next the logo for sure. And then over time, if you have something that's distinct like Tiffany blue or Home Depot orange, once those things gain like a distinctiveness, you can then protect those colors as well, you know. if it's like just a color. But if it's part of your logo, you can certainly protect your color. But if you're talking about being known for that certain color blue, that's something that, you know, builds over time.
Okay. And about like designs or books, you know, a lot of businesses now, or there's a lot of product businesses that are out there. So outside of just their name, people will come with cups or earrings or books, workbooks, sheets, like the list, t-shirts, the list continues, sweaters. So every day we go on Instagram, we see a sponsored post about something. So are you able to protect the type of product as well? Or is it more so like the design, color, slogan?
So those things, the words, your logo, slogan, those would fall under trademarks. But if you're talking about like something that's a written work, like a book, or like you talked about these sort of like sheets that people sell, like it could be a planner, you know, a certain type of layout for your planner sheets, or things like that, those would fall under copyright. So that's a way to also protect that. It's a different sort of body of law. It's the same sort of government office that protects those, but it's a little bit of a different body of law, and it's for those type of things that are what you call literary work. So it could be art, it could be music, it could be movement, like choreography. As long as it's like captured where someone can see it, then they could then it's protectable, and it would be protectable under copyright.
Some good info. Some good info. And make sure to utilize the question box. If you have any questions, make sure to drop it in. We have Sabine here, okay, the Purpose Lawyer. She's an asset protection attorney. So we're talking about legacy planning and everything that is part of our estate. So we're out here, we're trying to build businesses, generate wealth, support Black businesses, support businesses in general. And so it's so important that while we're building, we're also protecting.
Okay. That's right. And then another tool, although I don't provide it, but another tool that people should be thinking about is life insurance, because it's not only to leave money for your loved ones after your death, but you could also use it to build wealth, because it sort of operates on the stock market. It appreciates differently, faster than your money sitting in your bank account. And so it's another tool that you should incorporate, and something that you could get started with early, because of the fact that you have your prime health, right? Your health is prime. And so you'll get the best rates. And then there are different types of life insurance. Some types, which is term life, are super cheap versus your whole life, but you can buy one and convert it into the other one while you maintain, you know, the health that you once had as a young person. Right. So it's really something good. Like, I don't know, I feel like people, and I used to be like this too, you just think that people are trying to sell you something. Yeah. Right? Like, you just have a business and you're trying to sell me something. But it's really not all about just selling you something. Like, I've met different life insurance people over the years, and some of them I liked and some of them I didn't like. But I've come to learn that it's actually a really valuable tool that we should have. And we should, even as a community, be thinking about our elders, because you can get a life insurance policy over somebody who, you know, anybody you could get a life insurance policy on. You should think about the people who are in your family who are elderly, because if you get a life insurance policy on them, say it's $1 million, you and your community, I mean, when I say community, like your family members, could split that if you can't afford it, right? And when grandma passes, now you guys have $1 million. Like, isn't that amazing for her to be able to leave something like that for you if she couldn't build it in her lifetime? You know, and it's not about waiting for someone to pass away or whatever. It's about being smart. Like, this is what our counterparts are doing. That's why they have money to pay for college in full, or get scholarships, or, you know, buy their first apartment in the city overlooking Central Park. You know what I'm saying? Like, where
else are you getting this money? Like, where are you getting this money from?
Exactly, because they knew the game. The game was built for them. Yeah. You know, they knew the game, and then they used it and they played it. And we're over here trying to figure out how to catch up. We have to know what they're doing, and we have to do it.
Yeah, stop these GoFundMe.
Yeah.
Okay.
GoFundMe
We rely on GoFundMe, and the reality is there's a lot of things that we can do now, and the difference back then, they didn't know, and they weren't given access. Like a lot of these things that we have access to, they didn't have access. So we have the baton. Like we have the baton. We have smartphones. We get information everywhere. We could talk to Alexa, Siri. Like we have all of these things accessible to us. So, you know, how much is life insurance? Life insurance probably costs the same amount of some crab legs. Like it's one meal.
You can miss one date, one dinner out a month, and you can have you some life insurance. Stop playing games.
With some butter sauce. I mean, you can get butter sauce and everything. And
you could do it at home. We learned that we're all chefs at home, right? Yes. We had no choice. Make your crab legs at home and get you some life insurance.
Exactly. And someone said, Moni said, also stop selling grandma's house.
Yes.
Use it as an added investment property. Yes.
Yeah. Some people are like, oh, I don't want that house. It's a headache, or I just don't want to be bothered. So you don't want to be bothered with an inheritance, is what you're saying? You know what I mean? Like, if it's the right time to sell, you could sell, but make sure you invest that money. You know what I'm saying? If you're just not interested in that type of investment vehicle, cool. But it's not to just sell it and squander it, you know? And if it's a wrong time to sell, don't sell it. You know, get some renters in there. I know it's a headache dealing with tenants. Do it anyway. Like I didn't like have this epiphany early enough. And my mom had a 4-family house in Rosedale, Queens. 4-family houses. Well, I'm sorry, not 4-family. It was a 2-family, but a walk-in basement. So it was like a legal 3-family, essentially. She sold that in, I want to say like 7 years ago for $465,000. They bought it at like $60,000. So it was a come up, right? However, those houses now are selling for close to $1 million. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there are reasons within the family why it was done and, you know, why it had to be done at the time. However, had we been, you know, more woke about it, it would have been a different situation. And so definitely don't be quick to do things if it's not the right time. You gotta, don't buy, somebody said don't buy Gucci and Louis. Yes. Start putting your own brand on you. Whatever you gotta wear, put your own stuff on you. Put people from your community's brands on you. Stop giving money to these companies that don't care about you. And take that extra money and invest it.
And put it into something else. Right. I think a lot of what we're learning is to not focus on how much it costs or the headache, but really focus on the value. What's the value of this? Not just now, but long term, and what can it generate into versus, this is a headache. I don't want it. Forget it. And that's okay. Certain things may not be for you, but as long as you're still looking at other investment ways to do it. If they won't hire you there, don't stop there. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good one. If they won't hire you there, that is so true. I was looking for companies like when this whole Black Lives Matter, I was like, well, who's saying what? Because that's how I'm going to determine where my money's going nowadays. I'm not, you know, once you learn, like, once you, what the saying is that when you know better, you do better, right? So now we are awake and we need to do better, you know, forgive ourselves for when we weren't doing what we should have been doing, and now just turn it around.
Definitely.
That's it.
And we also had the example with Nipsey Hustle, right? And his estate. And I think all he needed was like a will or a trust.
Yeah, for Nipsey, one major thing with him and what we didn't really talk about is the fact that he had a daughter that he had custody over, and the mother did not have custody over the child. So meaning he had sole custody over his child. And because he had nothing in place, there was actually a custody battle where his family was trying to maintain custody of the daughter and the mother was fighting for custody again. So apparently, and I don't know this woman, so she had like a drug problem or something like that, and that's why he ended up getting custody over her. So imagine now this child goes back to somebody who wasn't fit to have them because of the fact that his her dad didn't put a plan in place. So yeah, a simple will for him, even just for that. If you was like, all right, I'm not doing a real estate plan, I just for that would have been sufficient to say, okay, I want my rights as far as parental rights to my child to be given to this person as guardian. So luckily in his case, you know, his family was smart enough to go and petition, and they were able to maintain custody of the daughter. But it didn't have to turn out that way.
And then so his estate as well, because he didn't have a will or a trust. So
yeah,
the estate that he has with his businesses and stuff like that, that's with the court. That usually
so
court.
In his situation, his brother applied to be, because when you die without a will, it's called intestacy. So it's basically, it goes according to however the law of that state says that your assets are going to go. And so with him, his brother applied for letters of administration, which means he wants to get appointed to be in charge of his brother's estate, and he got it. And so that's fine, but you don't really know if thank you, someone was at the seminar this morning.
Okay.
You don't really know if that's how he wants it. You know what I mean? So it's cool, but you don't know if that's what he wants. And so the thing about it is that you get to decide. So if you get to decide, decide.
Right.
Just like you get to vote, so vote, you know, like that type of thing. Like, don't give away your power.
And someone put Lauren London didn't get anything, I believe.
Right, because they weren't married yet.
No, I don't believe it.
So so she got nothing. I mean, she is the guardian of her children's estate. So she gets to manage their monies, but she had to also petition for that. You know, she had to petition for whatever would go to them as far as what the law says they would get. So she had to petition for that. But there are situations like, you know, a lot of people in our communities, they get separated and don't get divorced. And so if you were to die, all your stuff goes to your ex, you know, that stuff like
so
that.
So if you don't want him to get it, and if legally you're still married, I think it's time to get that paperwork done. Because I think that happens to your, like if you have retirement money and stuff like that, usually automatically it'll go to the spouse unless you say something else.
I mean, so that's a good point that you bring up. One thing that you want to make sure is if you have beneficiaries or talk to other, this is not just for you guys too. If you have people in your family and your immediate influence, you know, let them know. Like if you had a beneficiary and that's no longer the person who you want to get your assets, you need to change it. So I had a conversation with somebody recently. Their father passed away. The father's ex-wife was the beneficiary of his pension, and she's nowhere to be found, right? So now the son can't even get the father's pension and it's just sitting there with the employer. So no one's having it right now. And there's nothing that can be done because it's going to be according to that plan, what the rules are for that plan. And a lot of times they're not trying to give out the money. So if you made a mess and you didn't, you know, all you have to do is select the right person. Like you just have to put the right name down. So be about your affairs. Like make sure you're checking the paperwork. Make sure you're updating this stuff every year. Like you are your business too. You know what I mean? Yeah. So treat yourself and your affairs as your business.
Yeah. Beyonce, can we have a talk about marriage, serious dating, and money? Yeah.
Oh.
Seriously.
That's a show in itself.
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole episode. And I think sometimes that, like, we may look at some of the marriage structures and different things and think, oh, I don't need that. But when it comes to building, if you're building with someone and maybe things change, what happens to all of that work, the real estate, if you purchase the homes, and when you have children, and in that scenario, it's like that money that husband worked so hard for, his child can't even get access to it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why it's just so important for you to continue these things as a lifelong thing. I mean, we make everything much more priority than our financial affairs, because it's not, like you said before, it's not sexy. We're not trying to sit there and think about this stuff. We're not trying to call the pension company and sit on the phone with them and make these changes or check it. But guess what? All the money you just worked for now goes down the drain. I had another situation that was crazy. This wife came to me. Her husband had passed away. He had retired, and he took I think it was his 401k, but he took his 401k and he took the maximum deduction or the maximum payout. When you take the maximum payout, that means that if you pass away, no one else is getting anything. So whatever you get for the rest of your life is what you get, right? So there's an option to do that. You could say, I want to get more money now. So like, say you're talking about 2,500 versus 2,000. You're like, I want to get 2,500 instead of 2,000. And when I die, nobody else gets anything, right? So if you're older, you may want to consider that, depending on how old you are. This guy passed away 2 years after he retired, and his wife got nothing from his pension. So you telling me he works all those years, and because he was being selfish, he got 2 years
to enjoy that money, and then
that money, and the rest is his employer's.
So these employers make money too, because if there's no money for them to pay out, they get to keep it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gamble. He chose it. You know what I mean? It's a gamble, but you have to think about these things. We don't know how long we're going to live. That's why you can't wait forever to start doing these. Was she with him shooting in the gym?
Yes, once they get married, she was in the gym shooting with you, okay?
They were married for years. They were married for like over 20 years. So she was with him, and she was hella upset after we sat down. She just couldn't believe it. She was like, this is crazy.
We got a few questions.
To make better decisions.
Someone put, since you brought up custody, is it true that if a woman gives birth, she doesn't have custody until she files for sole custody?
It's not that she doesn't have custody. You both have custody. If the father signs the birth certificate, you both have custody. The only thing is there's no order. So what happens is if he wants to come and get the child and take the child, he could do that because there's no order. Now, you both have equal rights. Now, if you go to court and get an order, then the court would say you have the child this day, and he has the child this day. And then if he tries to take the child on your day, or if he tries to take the child out of the state or whatever, and vice versa, then that becomes a problem. But you both have equal rights to that, equal parenting rights. And so you can't deny someone equal parenting rights unless there's an order from a court saying so.
Okay. So when it comes to
and I don't, someone asked if I do whole life insurance. I don't, but I know a couple of people who do. You could check out, Lindsay Smith, the agent. She's cool, and she has like over 15 years of experience and kind of really does a good job educating her clients. So.
Okay. And I think someone put so with prenups, right? So you're building. Let's say you're building.
We're like all the way off. It's okay. Go ahead.
So let's say you're building individually, like you're building your businesses, and now you get married. I think someone put any good advice on protecting your 401k or properties with a prenup. So do you have that experience as well with asset protection, like where someone protected their estate individually, and then now when you're married, like are you able to separate that estate, or does it automatically kind of?
So there's one thing to start with is that when the properties that you have, the property and assets that you have from prior to the marriage, as long as you don't mix them with your marital assets, then they stay yours, right? So what that means is, say you got an inheritance. Inheritance is always separate property. Say you got an inheritance and you didn't put that in your marital account or any account that you and your spouse share, and you just kept it in a separate account, and just never mingled your income or your marital funds with those funds, that will stay separate. However, if you want something more concrete in place, you can do what's called a prenup, and you can state, okay, we're coming into this marriage, I have this, you have this, and we're making an agreement. It's like a contract. We're making an agreement that even if we acquire XYZ or whatever it is, it can be designed however you want it to be designed. Then if we do exit this marriage, or if we exit this relationship, this is how it's going to look. You're going to leave with this, I'm going to leave with that, vice versa. And so you can do that to protect your assets that you acquire, if you acquired, assets outside of the marriage, or even stuff like Jeff Bezos, before he got married, he didn't have nothing. I mean, when he got married, he had nothing, and he started Amazon, and now like they're multi-billionaires. And so him and his wife actually decided to, after I think they were getting a divorce. I'm not sure if they're still together or not.
No,
but whatever.
They were in the process now, I think.
You're divorced now, okay. So they're in the process of getting a divorce, and they end up, deciding on how they were going to split the monies that they earned. And she decided that she was going to leave her money in the business rather than take it, because she felt like it was more valuable to do so. So in their situation, they kind of worked it out, but sometimes there's no telling on how it's going to turn out. You don't know if you're going to have, billions and billions of dollars, but if you have an idea, you can certainly put some stuff in place, But if there was
no, I'm gonna keep my money in there. It looks like the business is going pretty well.
Exactly, and who needs all those billions of dollars? But not only that, it's a bit, not that they don't need it, but she don't need it all right now.
Right.
And so it's also strategic though on their part, because if they give all of their I teach finances, they do whole life insurance as well. So yeah. What was I saying? I forgot.
You said they may not need all the money right now, and in some scenarios.
Yeah. So for them, if she would have taken it, she might have hurt her children in terms of taxes, because with that type of money, they're gonna get taxed like crazy when one of them pass away. It's called estate tax. Yes, they get you coming and they get you going. And so if you don't use estate planning tools and vehicles and splitting up the money and, working different ways to kind of avoid getting taxed on all those funds, you can end up losing a lot of it. So they probably did that a bit strategically, so that the kids could get most, or, it could be passed on, most of it, without being taxed as much as possible.
Okay. Yeah. And then there was something called like will. What's the difference really between a will and a trust? Because I'll see the words interchange, and it's like, well, should you have a will? Should you have a trust? Or is it something that you can have combined?
You would have both. If you have just a will, sometimes people do just a will just because they don't want to do a more sophisticated plan or can't afford it. And I say have something instead of nothing. Okay. But typically, if I'm doing a trust for you, then you're also going to have a will, because it's sort of essential to protect in case there's anything that comes afterwards that falls outside of a trust. But the reason why a trust is more attractive is because it basically allows you to avoid probate. That's one of the main parts of it that's attractive, is that probate is where you have to go to court, get the court involved. You have to pay fees based on the size of the estate, etc. So that's why that's why you would want to have a trust instead of he said trusts are expensive. That's why you want to have a trust instead of just a will, because it makes it easier. And especially for people who have real estate or have assets in various states, it's easier to transfer all those assets to one trust, so that your family doesn't then have to go to probate in every single state where you have your assets held. So, and there's so many different things that you could do with a trust. So many different types. There's a lot of tax shelter opportunities with trust, which means, you pay less taxes for doing it the right way. They can be expensive, but when you're talking about expensive, you got to think about it in relative to what, you know what I mean? So you're comparing it to not having it, having to go to probate, having to pay the courts, having to pay lawyers. So, at the end of the day, it's not expensive, but it's an investment. I like to call it an investment.
Yes. All things on investment. So I'm getting the countdown on Instagram, because they won't be great.
Yes, and make sure you save this.
Yes, I will save this post. So thank you all for joining. I am going to give a giveaway. So I'm going to need everybody with their Twitter fingers to be ready. And the giveaway is going to be a free class for you to learn how to do your own business formation documents. Yes. Sponsored by the Sabine Purpose Lawyer. Woo! So, whoever got the fastest fingers here. So, another tool outside of going to GoDaddy, which has no value when you're starting a business, what has the most value? What is something you have to do in your business for it to have the most value? I need them fingers going. Whoever got the first response in the message box gets the giveaway. And just a reminder, the giveaway is a free course on how to form your own business from start to finish. Moni with the Twitter fingers. Okay. All right, Moni, because I think the people in the back weren't paying attention. So, right. So Moni, you have the option of keeping the gift or putting it back in the ring for someone else, and I have less time, so we might have to jump back on again.
All right.
Okay, Moni is like, I'm keeping this. So
we laugh.
I'll give it away to someone who really needs it. All right. Oh, all right.